What's going on, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with Scoop Duck on 3, coming to you on Tuesday, October 21st, 2025. Not entirely sure this is going to hit your feed on a Tuesday, but it is a Tuesday as I record this. We have another awesome episode of the pod in store for you guys today. We got our TED Talk with our guy, Ted Leroux. But before that, we got to get to this. This episode is brought to you by the Derman Law Firm PC. Attorney Jacob Y. Derman is a car accident lawyer who fights against the insurance companies for injured Oregonians. If you've been in a motor vehicle accident, call or text Jacob directly at 541-241-6470. That's 541-241-6470. Jacob was born in Medford, raised in Bend, went to college here in Eugene, and now takes cases across every county in Oregon. And he's also a diehard Ducks fan. He hasn't missed a single game in person, home or away, every single season. Like I mentioned, I'm not rolling solo. I am joined by a good friend of the show, the host of that show out west, and a contributor for us over at Scoop Duck on 3, my man, Ted Leroux. Ted, how are you, my friend?
Well, I'm doing good. I almost cried myself to sleep not being on a Tuesday TED Talk last week, but I'm back. I'm better than ever, but life happens. We all get busy, and but yeah, we're ready to get rolling. Big game coming up this week against Wisconsin. So yeah, it should be a good time as always here.
Ducks are back at home in Eugene for their homecoming game as the number 6 Ducks prepare to host the Wisconsin Badgers. That's a 4 p.m. Pacific kickoff on FS1. Tim Brando, Devin Gardner, and Josh Sims on the call for that one, Ted. So we're not exactly at the midway mark, but we're pretty close to the midway mark. And like you said, we didn't get to sync up last week. So kind of my thoughts here was just that we could assess where the Ducks are at now in the grand scheme of things. They took their first loss against Indiana, and then they bounced back in pretty epic fashion against Rutgers. So I'll just tee it up for you. Maybe we can kind of just start with how you evaluated that Indiana loss, and then we can get to more recent stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting since the last time I was on here, the loss to Indiana and then the win against Rutgers, we saw two different versions of this football team. And the version that we saw against Indiana was really unlike anything else that we saw this year. Dante Moore being hesitant, and not really ripping the ball as much as we've seen him earlier, and not playing with as much confidence, I think, back there. And you saw the results of that. Now, of course, you got to give a ton of credit for Indiana. There's been a lot of talk about simulated pressures, certainly, and showing one thing and doing pre-snap, doing something else, post-snap, and all of that. Kind of on the opposition on the defensive side of the ball. But Indiana's a great team. I know, like, people get very they maybe have a little bit mixed feelings. They see that team on the other side, and they see the logo of a traditional basketball school, and maybe they don't give it maybe as much credit as they deserve. But that's a team that can win a championship this year. They can be hoisting the trophy when all is said and done. And you look at IU, Elijah Surratt was really tough to cover. On the other side, that was mostly Theron Johnson. That was mostly Ife Obadegwu, and they kind of struggled to keep up with him. Brandon Finney was awesome on the other side, right? He had that pick 6 and took it all the way back in that one. But, that loss, I think, was very out of the ordinary for Oregon against Indiana. And then you look it up, you follow it up, with this Rutgers game, and you have one of the best offensive performances in Duck history. They were talking about it on the Big Ten Network broadcast. They were inching closer and closer and closer to that 2015 output where you had, Vernon Adams and Royce Freeman, of course, on the ground, Tony Brooks-James, Darren Carrington, guys like that on that 2015 Duck squad, but they came up just a little bit short. But, man, you rushed for over 400 yards. I don't care who you play. I don't care if you play an FCS team or a G5 team. That's impressive. That's impressive, I think, with what they were able to do out there in a commanding performance. That is how a championship team responds from a bad day. And you got to give a lot of credit to Coach Lanning and these guys to be able to kind of get them to bounce back, because there's been some teams, not only this year, but in recent history, they've let a team beat them twice. Penn State, anybody? They're 0-4 in conference right now. They've lost 3 in a row since they lost to Oregon and fired their head coach. So, it takes a lot of a mental strength from not only the coaching staff, but also the guys in the locker room, because the coaching staff, it's obviously their job to kind of set the heartbeat on the mindset of the team, but it's also those leaders in the locker room. You look at the Iapanilala Olus and some of the other guys that have been mentioned as leaders of this group. It's up to them to be able to get this team right. And that's how an Oregon team should look against a team like Rutgers. That's It's a bad defense. They give up the most yards in the Big Ten. They give up the most pass yards in the Big Ten, and they just did. I think Oregon did what they were supposed to do, and they looked like Oregon pre-Indiana, really. So I think they're back in the swing of things, but you need to take it with a grain of salt. And, I'm sure we'll get into the Wisconsin game a little bit later here. Take that with a grain of salt as well, because these are not very talented teams. And right now it's all about kind of creating this 2-game bridge, Rutgers being the first, Wisconsin being the second, to get to November. Once we get to November, that's the time you got to be playing your best. I said that all the way back in the summer. September, October, obviously take care of business, win some ball games. But in terms of the eye test, in terms of the product on the field, November is when you want to be playing your best. So you can create that momentum into December and potentially into January as well.
That Rutgers game really felt like the get right game for the Ducks,
Yeah.
but I think you put it really perfectly, just as far as you can't put too much stock into it. I think you can credit guys for doing a good job and doing what they were supposed to do, but Lanning kind of said it in the Ducks versus them that dropped on Monday night, just as far as you're chasing that standard, and that's kind of what it's supposed to look like. So don't let a team beat you twice. That's definitely what the Ducks implemented, and just a terrific offensive showing, like you mentioned there. I really liked what we saw from the defense too. Aaron Flowers has kind of become the new or the next emerging star in this Oregon secondary. I think first it was Finney, and then more recently it was Kennedy, and Thieneman obviously had his moment in the interception and the whiteout. But Aaron Flowers forcing 2 turnovers, a fumble, and a pick. He just continues to play well beyond his years here, and that interception from Blake Purchase was really nice. They were able to kind of get some more of Purchase isn't a straight up backup. He's in the 2 deep, but they were able to get some of those backup guys in against Rutgers and get them some valuable reps. So aside from the great defensive showing, I thought it was really important for Dante and that offensive line to ultimately bounce back against Rutgers, and it felt like they did that in a big way.
Oh, you take a look at Aaron Flowers, and I said this on TSOW on Tuesday, and I'm like, do we need to start having the conversation? Dylan Thieneman's playing great ball, no question about it. He kind of plays that high linebacker and that 3 safety Tampa 2 type of look as well, but we need to start maybe having the conversation. Aaron Flowers is the best safety on this team, man, because he is playing great football. You forget that he's a true freshman. I mean, with some of these redshirt freshman, I said, thank you. You forget that he's such a young player, right now, and he's just making plays. You talk about getting the shoulder on the football and forcing the fumble. I mean, you talk about that interception as well. That's taking 2 drives, and it's not like the Blake Purchase interception is a great example where the ball, I believe, was tipped by Amari Washington. He's just kind of in the right place at the right time, and it falls into his lap. Whereas Aaron Flowers, he's the guy making the plays, jumping the route on that interception, jumping in front of the wide receiver, the pass catcher, and then the forced fumble, reading the play correctly, putting his shoulder on the ball. He's playing awesome football. Doing really good at coming up and defending the run. The whole secondary is doing a really good job at coming up and defending the run. But that's I'm saying is we can start the conversation. The answer still might come to Dylan Thieneman, but I think that's certainly something worth discussing in what we're seeing on this defense right now. And I want to shout out Bear Alexander again. I mean, he had another great game earlier in the season. You guys reported it kind of coming out of fall camp. It was Tion Gray, it was Terrence Green, and Bear was kind of in that conversation. He hadn't really at that point before game 1 really separated himself, but it seems like ever since that Penn State game, and I think the snap totals tell that story as well. Ever since that matchup, Bear has he's been a literal wild animal in there. And I think this Rutgers was another example of that out there. So it's it's fun to watch right now. This is that confidence booster, like you said, that this group absolutely needed after that Indiana. This was like the perfect opponent, after that Indiana game where, we talked about what Rutgers was, or should I maybe say wasn't, on the defensive side of the ball to get Dante and the run game and all of these guys in the offensive line and get their momentum back. Same thing on the defensive side of the ball. Now it's about kind of carrying that on the rest of the year.
And one thing I find myself asking, I think this is a good midway evaluation talking point here, Ted, is I guess just maybe which side of the ball we have more confidence in, because Oregon's only lost 1 game and it wasn't because of the defense. But then you look at what Oregon did offensively against Rutgers, and expect it or not, that was spectacular. So I think it's I don't know, maybe this is kind of what people were expecting a bit more of as far as just what a fully Dan Lanning team would look like in that the defense is maybe carrying a bit more of the weight right now. I don't know. I feel like either you can make an argument either way. Like, hey, I still feel good about the offense. It was only one bad performance. Dante could still be a generational talent, but I mean, their deficiencies and areas for growth really got exposed in that Indiana game. It felt like.
I'll tell you what, it's good to be balanced. It's good to certainly have the option that you can pick offense or defense right now. And I'll say this, after this Rutgers win, you still need to keep in mind what happened against Indiana. Right. Because you're not going to play. I mean, Iowa on the road is going to be a challenge, their first game in the month of November. Overall, Oregon is I think a level up from where the Hawkeyes are, but playing a game at Kinnick is always a weird type of deal, man. A lot of Big Ten teams have gone in there, and it's been a tough deal against them. And, we'll see what happens with like a USC, even a Minnesota that's coming off a big win over Nebraska. They have them in the month of November as well. But it's important. They're not going to play an elite team like in Indiana the rest of the year. I think that's pretty fair to say based on what we have the rest of the schedule. So it's important to keep that not only for us as fans, but also for those on the coaching staff, in the room, players, to be like, hey, if we want to accomplish our ultimate goal, if we want to win a championship, we still need to keep in mind these things that happen against Indiana, and we need to be able to make sure those things don't happen again when you get into December in a playoff game, when you get into January, if you're fortunate to be able to get to that point as well. So and when you talk about offense versus defense, like you said, I thought the defense overall played a pretty solid game against Indiana. But offensively, of course, they had the struggles. De'Aaron Hill couldn't get anything going, and Dante Moore, of course, had his struggles right now. So I think when you kind of evaluate these two units, like defensively, love the front, love the secondary. For the linebackers right now, it's kind of I don't know, like, if you see this defense match up against an elite offense, is the linebacker unit. And I'm not saying it's poor by any means. It's still a pretty solid and a good unit. But I think overall, it's just, how are they going to be able to hold up if they play Indiana, if they play Ohio State, if they play Alabama a little bit later on? Is that something that's possibly going to cost you a game? We just don't know, and we probably won't know the answer to that for quite a while. So it's I think there's maybe, if you're talking, I might go on the offensive side of the ball, even though the defense has been really good when they're playing at their best. And I think the offensive line continues to get better. I don't necessarily think that maybe there's a group like the linebackers, like there is on the defensive side, where there's kind of a clear, I hate to say weak, because nothing on this Oregon team is weak. Sure. That's comparing. Everybody says it's the worst. It's bad. Well, no, it's put everything into perspective, considering how all the other teams in the country are right now. But the offense seems to favor that right now. But it is, you have that performance against Indiana. It kind of makes you second guess that a little bit. But you're in a pretty good spot to say, hey, you can go offense, you can go defense, certainly.
Yeah, and it seems like the two areas that you look at as far as just areas of need, or areas to address, probably pass blocking, or what we're seeing from the tackles a little bit. I think generally people have a bit more of a positive view of Isaiah World and Alex Harkey right now. And again, that's not to say that Harkey's not playing well, but like we saw, for example, Janoris Wilson came in to play right tackle against Rutgers, and they kicked Harkey into right guard. And then on defense, you have kind of the linebackers that are maybe looked at the least favorably by the fan base. So it's you can kind of just splitting hairs a little bit, it feels like, but we have a good feel for this team. We're gonna talk a bit more about our feel for this team heading into this Wisconsin game right after this. Duck fans, are you going to an Oregon game this season? If you are, the Oakway Lifestyle Center at the corner of Oakway and Coburg is the destination for Duck fans. Whatever you're looking for, they've got it all. Get a bite to eat at Sun River Brewing or PF Chang's. Check out shops like Lululemon or Nordstrom Rack. Need a place to stay? Book your lodging at the Hyatt Place at Oakway Center and visit their rooftop bar. The Oakway Lifestyle Center is walking distance from Autzen Stadium, has something for everybody, and is a great post-game place to celebrate another Duck victory. Max Torres of Scoop Duck on 3 back with you here on the Ducks Dish podcast with our good friend Ted Leroux. If you like what you're hearing from Ted and myself, we definitely invite you to come check us out over at scoopduck.com and join in on the fun on our message boards. $1 gets you a subscription started, and you get a year of complimentary access to The Athletic. So come and see us, join the party over at scoopduck.com. So Ted, I think I want to get into some of these updates that we got from Dan Lanning on Monday night as we turn our attention a bit here to Oregon's next game back at home against Wisconsin. I think two of the more notable updates, Jaden Lamar is going to be missing a little bit of time. Lanning wasn't super specific about, how long he's going to miss for the Ducks this year, but it sounds like it's going to be, a fairly short injury. If you could say that. I mean, his quote was, he's out, he's going to be out for a little bit, but I don't anticipate it being a really long time. So that's an opportunity for Oregon's running backs to step up. And I think that you never want a guy to get hurt, but I'm looking at it if I'm Jordan Davison and saying, hey, this is an opportunity for me to take on a bigger role. And I think that's going to be good for Jordan Davison to get more touches because the guy can straight up play.
Yeah, I think when you look at that running back rotation, you mentioned Lamar, can kind of, if you're deciphering that quote a little bit, it feels like they're maybe trying to get him back after the bye week. Of course, Wisconsin this upcoming week. And then they have that bye, which I think is November 1st, which is that Saturday. And then November 8th, I believe, is that game against Iowa. So, that gives you about, 2 or 3 weeks or so, whatever it ends up being from when he was injured, to get Jaden Lamar back into the lineup. But I love this 3 running back rotation, regardless if 27 is in there or not. I think that this is the 3 running back rotation that I think I really like the most, with Noah Whittington. And it really seemed, kind of flashing back to that Rutgers game, it seemed like Noah Whittington, because he was hurt before Penn State, and then they had the bye, and then they had the Penn State game, and he was he was a little iffy in that game. And then you look at the next game against Indiana, and it just didn't seem like he had that popper juice. And now it seemed like against Rutgers, it seemed like he was finally fully healthy and ready to go. So if you have Whittington, and then you have the 2 freshman backs, of course, Jordan Davison in that power back type of mold, they kind of line him up in that almost like a fullback type of role as a lead blocker in some formations. De'Aaron Hill, and then, of course, the aforementioned home run hitter that is De'Aaron Hill right now. So it's a great opportunity for them to, I think, really be able to establish what they can do, maybe who's going to get the bulk of these carries down the stretch in the final 4 regular season games, and see exactly what this run game is going to look like going forward. I know Jaden kind of gets in there, for some other things and that he does, and I think he's got a role on this team, but I think these 3 guys, Noah Whittington, and the aforementioned Davison and Hill, I think these are the 3 best running backs in the squad right now.
The other development that we saw from the Rutgers game was that Brock Thomas came in as the backup quarterback after Dante Moore finished up his day at the office, almost 300 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, only 5 incompletions. And I mean, I don't know how you felt, Ted, but I was fully expecting to see either Austin Novosad or Luke Moga. And then on Monday, Lanning confirmed that Oregon is going to be looking at Brock Thomas as the primary backup quarterback, at least for now. Talking about how he's earned those reps in practice, and he got asked about it again, so I threw it in our story as well on Scoop Duck with my takeaways. He said that role might change in the future, but right now Brock has earned those opportunities in practice. And I don't know. I just have such a hard time believing if Oregon is about to lose a game and Dante Moore is hurt, that they would be turning to Brock Thomas to, lead them to victory. And that's not a slight at Brock Thomas, but those are 2 scholarship quarterbacks. One of them, at least, that you think is going to be part of your team for the long run, or for at least multiple years, versus a walk-on. So it's just a little surprising to me.
It's yeah, I agree. You kind of framed it up in a good way. If Dante Moore, for whatever reason, God forbid, he goes down, I have a very difficult time believing that Brock Thomas is going to be the guy that's trotting out there and running this offense to a full effect. So, I'm not sure exactly what they're doing with West Austin Novosad right now. Of course, that was the battle that was going on, throughout spring and throughout fall camp as well. And then, we've seen Luke Moga earlier on this season. We've seen Moga relieve Dante Moore. I don't know. Have we seen Austin Novosad on the field this? It's been such a long season so far. I don't know if we've seen him. It's kind of everything kind of
I'll look it up.
Everything kind of gets jumbled together. But yeah, it's just, for as talented as we, obviously you follow him in recruiting, what he was a 4-star coming out of Texas and where he's standing right now. It seems like they're doing something to maybe try to keep, whether it's from an eligibility standpoint where they don't want to put him in a bunch of games where they want to kind of preserve that somehow. I thought he took his red shirt although already. And maybe they're trying to, there's been some talk is be like, oh, they're trying to pass him off as injured, and maybe there's like a medical red shirt of how he can preserve that year of eligibility or whatever it is. I don't know how valid or not valid that is. I know there's some theories certainly going around with Austin Novosad right now. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And Dan kind of sneaking in there to be like, oh, this could maybe change in the future. That kind of gives them a little bit of an out that if something were to happen to Dante, they can throw in Novosad at that point. But it's a little bizarre, I think, to say the least, and how things have progressed in terms of who comes in after Dante Moore.
Yeah, so Novosad has already taken his red shirt. He's a redshirt sophomore, and he's only played in one game this season, and that was the opener against Montana State back in August. So I think that even when Dante Moore transferred to Oregon, like a majority of people thought it was going to be his team and his job after Dylan Gabriel went off to the NFL, right? And that's been the case. But a lot of us thought that Novosad would be the primary backup, and that hasn't been the case. But granted, they haven't really needed a backup, thankfully, so far this year. So that's something we're going to definitely keep tabs on. I think as we get into the week here and into the next game that is for Oregon. Kind of weird that they're going to have another bye after this Wisconsin game, because kind of they just had one, but you're going to have to lean into that one the best that you can and try to rest up. One more offensive note real quick from the Rutgers game is it was great to see Kenyon Sadiq doing Kenyon Sadiq things. 2 touchdowns. That second one looked like it might have hurt him a little bit coming down on that shoulder or something, but after being used sparingly, might even be putting it too lightly, but like hardly used at all against Indiana. He was back looking himself against Rutgers.
Yeah, and that's I think a thing that some viewers and listeners on TSOW on my side have kind of talked about as well. It's like, dude, we need to get Kenyon Sadiq kind of involved a little bit more. We need to be able to target him a lot more and really take advantage of his talents. And you started to see that. Okay, he had the most receptions, the most catches. Ball was spread around pretty well, and that's kind of been a mantra for this season, right? They like to, what does Wolstein say? He likes to feed the studs, right, across a variety of ways to a variety of people. And now you're looking at and Sadiq, of course, is one of those, but they've got many others. I think like Malik Benson really stepping up this season. Gary Bryant Jr. playing like he has played this season. There's a lot of weapons, I think, to be able to feed the ball. They kind of offer different skill sets. But you kind of look at Kenyon, and it's very interesting. I looked at this, and I kind of had the same feeling. I'm like, yeah, maybe they need to get him involved a little bit more like they did against Rutgers. And I look at it, and he's right there. I think he's like second in receiving. He's second. I think he might be third in catches. Like, he's still highly involved, but it seems like we're expecting that little extra push right now. I kind of said this on TSOW. I think very much so that Kenyon is very much that cleanup hitter when you got runners in scoring position, right? When you get near the, inside the 35, inside the 30, he fits so well to be able to really exploit some of those matchup problems. When you get closer to the goal line, you can utilize his size, in kind of a jump ball type of situation and all that. I mean, yeah, you saw things like that against Rutgers. So that's and he leads the team in touchdowns. So that story kind of pays off that way. So that's kind of where I think I see Kenyon and maybe the staff kind of fits them in right now. But it's going to be interesting to see if they see him involved a lot more. But I think what this wide receiver room has looked like, and I think because we knew DeCorian Moore was going to be good, but how maybe like Malik Benson and others have stepped up, I think has provided a lot more options within this Oregon offense.
Just to wrap us up here, Ted, maybe we hit a little defense. I thought it was intriguing how much Naeem Offord we saw last week.
Yeah.
And Lanning talked about him on Monday, just how he's proven himself in practice and how that's more or less just resulted in him playing more. The Ducks seem like they are very confident in Brandon Finney Jr., and how can you not be? I mean, the dude just doesn't allow anything on defense when teams go back to pass. But I don't know. I think seeing him rotate in a bit more, I feel like Ifeoma Badeglu is solid, but I think they're maybe a little bit more open to rotating that starting spot opposite of Iffy, because Naeem played a whole lot in that last game. Granted that it was Rutgers, but between that and then the first really good chunk of playing time for Dylan Williams at linebacker, those are kind of the two interesting defensive developments that I'm following here as they return home to face Wisconsin. Dylan Williams looks like that fourth linebacker for the Ducks.
Yeah, and Naeem earlier in the season had a blown coverage against I believe it was Northwestern, if I remember correctly. But he kind of had a little bit of struggles out of the gate. But good for him to be able to kind of be able to write that. That's the thing with freshmen. When true freshmen, when they come in, you could even make the argument for redshirt freshmen in their first year playing. You just don't know how each guy is going to respond. You just don't know how fast each guy is going to develop. Some guys like a Brandon Finney, boom, DeCorian Moore, boom, they hit the ground running, fresh out of high school, and they're just that confident, they're just that talented. And then maybe there's some other guys like Aneem Offord, maybe he has to make a few mistakes earlier in his first season playing, and then by the time you get to late October and November, he's going to be like, okay, I think I got my feet under me now, and I can play at the level that I think matches my talent. That his high school tape showed coming out of Alabama. So it's different for different guys as well. And then the linebacker, I mean, you need to get some of these redshirt freshmen healthy. I mean, that was kind of one thing that we talked about in the spring and throughout fall camp. It's like, hey, which one of these guys, from the Dylan Williams to the Braden Platts and some of these other guys, who is going to be able to step up? And now that you're starting to get these healthy, the first one being Dylan Williams, we saw a good amount of him against Rutgers. Okay, now we talk about, hey, maybe the linebacker, isn't as good as the defensive front or the secondary. You start to get some reps under these guys, and now you get a little bit deeper, because I think it's clear that maybe Devin Jackson hasn't been what everybody expected. I think coming into the year, Jerry Mixon has occupied that role next to Bryce Betcher. I think Bryce is, I think he is what he is. I think at this moment in time, and he's a very good linebacker. Let's just make that perfectly clear. But having more depth at that position outside of Bryce, outside of Jerry, is going to allow Brian Michalowski, Tosh Lapointe, Dan Lano, maybe take a little bit of a deep breath. That if one of these guys go down, we could be in a little bit of trouble. Now you get these guys some reps, and maybe you'll have a little bit more depth when it really matters at the end of the regular year and into the playoffs.
And we saw Dylan Williams make some really good plays kind of throughout the spring and even in the spring game a little bit. I think he had some good moments. So, to your point, it's like you just got to have a guy ready to go. Braden Platt's been injured for what feels like the whole season. Kamar Matuidi played a little bit as the fourth linebacker, kind of when Oregon was in the non-con slate. But now that Dylan Williams is back healthy, he's looking solid. And it was a 6-way tie for second on the team in tackles last game with 5. And he was right there. So he's doing his thing. And I think his continued development is definitely a positive for the Ducks. Going to be interested to see how he plays moving forward, especially in those big games against like Iowa and USC. But any final thoughts here, Ted, before we get out of here?
Oh, I think we covered a lot of it. This week is going to be, it's always an interesting one for myself. I grew up in the state of Wisconsin. I've watched a lot of Badger football. I grew up in that city. I grew up in Madison. And then of course I've been following Oregon football since 2007, now doing what I'm doing professionally. So it's a little bit of a clash. I feel like I'm a dad and both of my kids are on, then they're playing against each other kind of right now, but it's going to be a fun week. It's kind of it's unfortunate to see the Badger program where it's at right now. Ducks should take care of business in a big way. I think that I love all the Grateful Dead and tie-dye stuff that's going on right now and all. I think Nike released a line of shoes and the uniforms and all this stuff that kind of goes into the history and the connection between Nike, University of Oregon, and the Grateful Dead, of course. So it's going to be a fun week. I think it's going to be a fun week. Going to be fun, of course, for the folks that are in there back at Autzen Stadium for homecoming, like you said. But looking forward to this game on Saturday. So it should be a fun one.
It'll be a fun one, and we'll have you guys covered with all the action over at scoopduck.com. So we hope you join us, and you can experience the joy that is a Scoop Duck gamer thread. Nothing but rational takes from every single fan that's in there with us. Ted knows what I'm talking about. That's why he's chuckling over there. But if you want to find more of Ted, check him out at That Show Out West. Follow him on X at Ted on the Ducks. You can find me anywhere at Torres Sports. Subscribe to the Scoop Duck On 3 YouTube channel and share the show with everybody you know. But big thanks to Ted for coming on, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.